Welcome to this month's workshop on depression and suicide. It is vital that the Wellness Center provide this workshop to you on an as-need basis to promote wellness and knowing those who are struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts are not alone. September is Suicide Prevention Month. To see what more you can do to help others who may be struggling with depression and suicide, or if you yourself are struggling, you can go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Trigger warning. Suicide and depression will be discussed in detail in this workshop. The workshop includes clips from real people struggling with depression and suicidality. If you feel these topics will be a trigger, please reconsider continuing from this point on. Depression. Major depression is one of the most common mental health disorders in the U.S. For some individuals, major depression can result in severe impairments that interfere with or limit one's ability to carry out major life activities. It causes severe symptoms that affect how you feel, think, and handle daily activities, such as sleeping, eating, or working. And that also includes attending school, studying, how well you do on assignments, how well you do on exams. And according to the DSM-5, a major depression episode is based on a period of at least 2 weeks when a person experienced a depressive mood or loss of interest of pleasure in daily activities and had a majority of specified symptoms such as problems with sleep, eating, energy, concentration, or self-worth. In this data conducted by SAMHSA in 2017, an estimated 17.3 million adults in the U.S. had at least one major depressive episode. This number represented 7% of all U.S. adults. The prevalence of major depressive episodes is higher among females compared to males, and the prevalence of adults with a major depressive episode was highest among individuals aged 18 to 25, about 13% of the population. Data from the American College Health Association did a study of 75 schools in the country, 4 of which being community colleges, with a sample size of around 50,000 students. In that study, of the students who reported experiencing depression during the spring 2020 semester, 58.2% of students stated depression negatively impacted their academic performance. If you have been experiencing some of the following signs and symptoms most of the day, nearly every day for at least 2 weeks, you may be suffering from depression. Persistent sad, anxious, or empty mood, feeling of hopelessness or pessimism, irritability, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, loss of interest of previously pleasurable activities, decreased energy or fatigue, moving or talking slowly, feeling restless or having trouble sitting still, difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions, difficulty with sleep, early morning awakening or oversleeping, appetite, loss of appetite, increased appetite, or significant weight changes, thoughts of death or suicide attempts, or feeling it physically, so aches or pains, headaches, cramps, digestive problems without a physical cause, and or that do not ease even with treatment. But please do not diagnose yourself. You should seek out a mental health professional to see if you are diagnosed with depression. Suicide prevention. Suicide is a major public health concern. Over 48,000 people died by suicide in the United States in 2018. It's the 10th leading cause of death overall. Suicide is complicated and tragic, but it's often preventable. Knowing the warning signs for suicide and how to get help can save lives. Signs and symptoms that someone may be thinking about suicide. Talking about or wanting to die or wanting to kill themselves. Talking about feeling empty, hopeless, or having no reason to live. Making a plan or looking for a way to kill themselves, such as searching for lethal methods online, stockpiling pills, buying a weapon. Talking about great guilt or shame, feeling trapped, feeling unbearable pain, whether it's emotional or physical. Talking about being a burden to others, using alcohol or drugs more often, feeling anxious or agitated, withdrawing from family and friends, not going out as much, not seeing people as much, changing their eating and sleeping habits, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge, taking great risks that could lead to death, such as driving extremely fast, talking or thinking about death often, displaying extreme mood swings, suddenly changing from very sad to very calm or happy, giving away important possessions, saying goodbye to friends and family, putting affairs in order, or making a will. If these warning signs apply to you or someone you know, get help as soon as possible, particularly if the behavior is new or has increased recently. This study mentioned earlier with the 50,000 student population sample, reported that 21.5% of males and 25.4% of females scored high for positive suicidal ideations. 2% of those students indicated that they have attempted suicide within the year. And nearly 50% of students reported moderate levels of stress, and 25% of students reported high levels of stress. So that's about 75% of students of this population who reported significant amounts of stress. Suicide risk factors. Suicide does not discriminate. People of all genders, ages, and ethnicities can be at risk. Suicidal behavior is complex, and there's no single cause. Many different factors contribute to someone making a suicide attempt, but people most at risk tend to share specific characteristics. The main risk factors for suicide are depression and other mental disorders, or substance abuse disorder, certain medical conditions and chronic pain, if there's a prior suicide attempt, or even a family history of suicide, family history of mental disorder, family violence, including physical or sexual abuse, having guns or other firearms in the home, having recently been released from prison or jail, and being exposed to other suicidal behavior, such as that of family members, peers, or celebrities. Many people have some of these risk factors but do not attempt suicide. It's important to note that suicide is not a normal response to stress. Suicidal thoughts or actions are a sign of extreme distress, not a harmless bid for attention, and should not be ignored. It is also important to discuss self-harming behaviors. This, for many, is a way to feel and relieve stress. Those who self-harm do not want to die, but instead want to relieve some pain. In the previous study we have been mentioning, 9.4% of college students indicated that they intentionally cut, burned, bruised, or otherwise injured themselves within the last 12 months. If you know someone struggling with emotional pain, please reference these 5 simple steps. Ask, are you thinking about killing yourself? It's not an easy question, but studies show that asking at-risk individuals if they are suicidal does not increase suicides or suicidal thoughts. Keep them safe. Reducing a suicidal person's access to highly lethal items or places is an important part of suicide prevention. While this isn't always easy, asking if the at-risk person has a plan and removing or disabling the lethal methods can make a difference. Be there. Listen carefully and learn what the individual is thinking and feeling. Research suggests acknowledging and talking about suicide may reduce rather than increase suicidal thoughts. Help them connect. Save the National Suicide Prevention Lifelines number and the crisis text line number, so it's there when you need it. You can also help make a connection with a trusted individual, like a family member, friend, spiritual advisor, or mental health professional. And stay connected. It's super important that after a crisis, someone is checking in and someone is showing that they care. Studies have shown the number of suicide deaths go down when someone follows up with the at-risk person. This video is about a student shedding light on depression, as well as other mental health disorders. This student discusses his internal struggle with getting help and the stigma surrounding his mental health.
You know, when I was a young kid, my mom used to always tell me, "Did you brush your teeth?" before I went to bed every night. Actually, who am I kidding? When I go back home, my mom still asks me if I brush my teeth every night before I go to bed. I'm like 21. But a few years ago, my mom started to ask me a different question. "Hey, did you take your medication before I went to bed?" I take lithium before I go to sleep, almost every day. I took it last night before this conference too. Lithium. I know what that is. That's the lithium ion battery. It's what makes laptop and cell phone batteries, right? But why is it in my body? During the second semester of my freshman year, I was a completely different person. I hated myself for weeks and weeks. Nothing gave me joy or happiness. I had slowed cognition. I started to stutter in class. I saw no purpose in anything, no worth. I barely ate. Day after day, I even had suicidal thoughts. Living was painful and meaningless anyway. Why live? One day in my dorm, I almost lost myself to my suicidality. Gasping for life, I then finally decided I need some help. I called my dad, who immediately told my mom to fly over here from Korea and take me to a psychiatrist right away. I was diagnosed MDD, major depressive disorder. Although recommended to be hospitalized, I ended up just staying in my room instead for 4 months. I was on a medical leave. Depression was not, I had a really bad day, I had a really bad week, but it was, I'm worthless. And for my family, I'm clearly better off dead. They'll be much more happy when I'm gone. For 4 months, every moment I was awake. Depression was more painful than the time in the hospital where I broke my clavicle while I was snowboarding. That's the closest reference point I can think of in terms of physical pain so far in my life. However, soon I learned that my DSM diagnosis was not of major depressive disorder, but actually bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder includes a manic episode in addition to the depressive episode. In mania, I almost didn't sleep. I talked fast, I had countless world-changing business ideas. I was arrogant and I was on a ridiculous buying spree. I drank and smoked in parties every night with different people for 40 days and nights straight. My friends and family thought I was going crazy, but just on the other direction. Slowly, I realized that I was very abnormal. My psychiatrist told me that I was manic, and that taking the lithium might help me prevent future mania or depression if taken regularly for the rest of my life. I then promised myself to be more stable, and later on decided to return to Pen 2. Now I've been taking lithium for 3 years, but first, in secret. What do I say to my friends? I hid my pill bottles from my roommates. When I was going to therapy, I would just say, I'm going to buy something from the bookstore, because the bookstore is right next to Penn's counseling. But last winter of 2014, a total of 6 Penn students ended their own lives over a period of 15 months. One after another, it reminded me of my own painful and dangerous suicidality when I was a freshman here. Hearing that news broke my heart and brought me to tears. I wanted to do something. I wanted to do anything I could in order to reverse this trend and address this issue, because I will never forget how much pain I was in and how close to actual death I went to. After weeks of thoughts and prayer, I first tell my close friends about my past history and current condition. And then I decide to share to the Penn community. I start from a few hundred likes on my Facebook and views on YouTube and notes on Tumblr and shares on articles featuring that post. I thought it was crucial for students in distress to reach their close social networks, whether it be their friends, their parents, their psychological or psychiatric services if necessary, without much stigma. When your teeth hurts, you think of visiting a dentist or chewing gum from Spencer Penn. When you're suffering mentally or emotionally, however, counseling or therapy is not really one of your options in your mind. I experienced and witnessed some other coping strategies common in college: sleeping in, watching television, eating, binge drinking, smoking, drugs, hookups, or even just working harder to get a better results as a coping mechanism for your stress. Mental health is an acceptable topic, but why is mental health sounding very strange? Wait, aren't you just sad? Aren't you just going through a stressful, tough time? Aren't you just depressed like everybody else? Here's a problem. The same word has 2 different meanings. Hey, how are you doing today? Oh, actually, I'm feeling really depressed right now. What does that mean? The same word depression could either mean unhappiness or clinical depression. Naturally, it's easy to downplay what could be a medical condition into just being sad or weak. Some could just say that my suicidality when I was a freshman was just an early sophomore slump. I was just, common slump in college, an identity crisis. Well, I'll give you that. Being right in between adolescence and adulthood, college is actually a crucial stage of self-identity formation. My prefrontal cortex, which guides my emotion and my decisions, is not even fully mature yet. But under excessive and unhealthy self-pressure or parental or societal pressure, students often, and they actually do, create harmful life habits for themselves, which can trigger a real mental disorder for those with the psychosocial vulnerabilities. Now imagine this conversation on campus. Hey man, what are you doing late night? What are you doing later tonight? Oh, after this bio class, I'm just finishing my lab. I need to go get a good grade on that one. Perfectly normal college conversation, right? But notice this. The have tos or the need tos in our daily lives are self-directed, authoritative words. Dr. William Mace, a clinical psychologist in Philadelphia, who's also passionate about college mental health, claims that these can control our emotional life for either or, right or wrong, black or white, value judgments. You have to do this today, you should do that today, but you didn't, but you couldn't. But the same conversation could sound like this. Oh, after bio class, I want to go finish my lab today. I'd like to get a good grade on that one. With this process for myself, I'm trying to make the to-do lists into want to-do lists. I can recognize my own voice in my life with more want tos or like tos. I don't have to. I want to. This helps reduce unhealthy self-pressure for me. I didn't have to deliver a speech today because I'm a mental health advocate, but I wanted to. If you think you don't have a choice in your mind, then you actually don't have a choice in your mind. You don't have to do something ever. Just be willing to be accepting of the consequence of not doing that action. My friends in college, you don't have to finish that bio lab. You don't have to join clubs or that team or rush. You don't have to lose or gain weight or dress nice. You don't have to go to that party on the weekend. You don't have to do well in your classes. You don't have to research or volunteer. You don't have to apply for those jobs or grants or grad schools. You don't have to graduate in 4 years even. And after graduation, you don't have to know exactly what you're doing. We might all want to do these things, but we don't ever have to. Self-care for mental health in particular should be much more prioritized than it is today. Mental disorders, suicidality takes away too many lives. In fact, after car accidents, suicide is the second leading cause of death for United States in college campuses. Like I mentioned, it took away 6 student lives in Penn last year. And actually, during this 10-minute speech, 15 more people ended their lives around the world. But just even in the United States alone, last year, over 1,000 college students ended their own lives on campuses across this country. That's at least 2 or 3 students today. How to prevent student suicides? There's no simple solution, I wish I knew. But every student is so different. I'm starting from one at a time, starting from myself. For me, my mental disease breeds self-hate and self-pity. I battled that with my belief that God loves me, I'm so wonderfully and fearfully made, so who am I to not love myself? Last winter, I wanted to share that testimony to my friends at Penn. I'm trying to save my own life every day, save it from excessive self-pressure, stress, and shame. Shame that blocks me from getting that help when I need it, from psychiatric or psychological services, because I think it makes me look weak. Last night, I took my lithium, and tonight, I'll take it again too. I don't have to, because my psychiatrist told me to, but I want to, at least for now. I'm not actually hiding it from my roommates in a drawer anymore, or anyone. What's my future like? A life sentence of medication? Well, yeah, perhaps, but still another sacred chance at life. Mental illness is real, painful, reoccurring, and often lethal. If you feel like you need help, please get the help. For me, suicide prevention is not preventing suicides or preventing deaths. It's about living more and finding your purpose and joy in each of your lives. Nobody can be actually saved from death, after all. Lastly, if your loved ones, friends, or family need help, please help them get the help. It's hard to get help yourself when you're at such a horrible place to begin with. You don't need to be a therapist to have a therapeutic conversation. And therapy and medication, they help for sure. But at the end, love heals people. I thank my parents, family, and friends who loved me back then and love me till now. And I thank God I'm still around and be able to deliver a speech to you today. Thank you.
Jake Tyler discusses his personal battle with mental health and suicide.
Wow, hi. All right? How's it going? How are you all feeling? That shouldn't be up there yet. Okay, how are we all doing? Awful. Awful. Not you. What you did was absolutely fine. I'm talking about the torturous engagement tactic that I just used. I hate that when the person, I know I just did it, but when the person comes out and they start doing the thing, and they ask a whole room full of people at the same time how they're doing, because the only thing you can really say in response to that is like, ow, or whatever you just did. And that isn't an appropriate answer to how you're doing. Any other situation, you know, I could be shopping in Woolworths in 1994, and I go up to, I'd see a mate in there looking at the Furbies, and I'd be like, hey, Gordon, you know, how's it going? And Gordon just turns around and goes, ow, like that, and just howls at the strip lighting at the top like some mad, citified 90s wolf. I'm going to think, what a freak, and just turn around, leave my basket of pogs there, and just walk off. But yeah, when people ask me how I'm doing, I say I'm fine generally, and I think that's what everybody does. But for me, that's not a real appropriate answer either, because for me, it's a way of deflecting the question. It's like a reflex. And deflecting that question is something I've got really good at, because a lot of the time I'm not fine. In fact, I live with depression. And deflecting people away from what's really going on with me is just what I do. When you get really convincing at pretending that you're okay, people just assume you are. Much like a lot of you thought there was nothing wrong with me when I first came out here. None of my friends, family, anybody knew anything was wrong with me until maybe a year and a half ago, when I decided to tell them. I'd been secretly living with dark thoughts and self-loathing for, you know, most of my adult life. And saying I'm fine and not addressing it and not letting anybody in is just a bad move, you know. And the things that have happened to me over the last year, the more I've sort of realized that it's like putting a plaster over cancer. You're not dealing with anything. Last April was the worst time for me. I was living with a feeling I can't even describe. I still can't. I have to now, obviously. But if I was to choose one word, it would be something like overwhelmed. I remember lying in bed one morning and I was overwhelmed because I was trying to remember what feeling happy felt like. And I couldn't remember. And I thought there's no point in living if I can't actually remember how to be happy anymore. I'd had suicidal thoughts before, as everyone who suffers from depression surely does. But always knew I'd never really go through with it because of the pain and, you know, everything that would cause the people that were close to me. Is, you know, what a great deterrent that is. I just couldn't do that. But that morning when I lay in bed, depression had completely taken over my thoughts. It manipulated and it had lied its way into making me think that ending my own life wasn't just best for me, but actually it would be best for everybody. Because that is what depression does. It overpowers you. It takes the wheel and it steers you away from everyone and everything you love. and it takes you down a dark tunnel. And when you're in that tunnel, it hugs you and it tells you that this is where you're supposed to belong. I called my mum that morning, but it wasn't because I needed help. I thought I was beyond help. I called her because I thought that day I was going to take my own life, and I called her to hear her voice one last time. Not only does my mum love me, I think, she knows me better than anyone, and also she's a mental health professional, and I think by the tone of my voice, the kind of things that I was saying, she knew something really serious was up, and the love I heard in her voice, she managed to bring me back for a second, and in that second, she suggested that together we get me some help. And that's kind of all it took. I went to my GP the next day, and I did something I thought I'd never do. I told someone I didn't know what was going on inside my own head. And after a little conversation about depression, he asked me a question I couldn't believe I hadn't asked myself. He said, "Do you actually want to die, or do you just not want to feel like this anymore?" I thought, what an important distinction to make, because when you're in that fog, you can't ask yourself questions like that. My depression doesn't hit me like a sledgehammer out of nowhere. And neither does it leave like with sudden relief, like waking up from a nightmare. It creeps in and then it creeps away again. It's like taking a painkiller for a headache. You don't know the instant your headache's gone. You just realise it's been gone a while. I realised I was feeling better when I was out walking the dog one day, and I realised I'd walked the thing 12 miles. And I was perfectly happy doing that, and it just felt good, you know? And this sounds weird, but everything looked normal again. All the colours looked how they should be, because depression kind of lowers the saturation on everything for me, and everything just looked good, and it just felt good. It was like the part of my brain that had conked out 6 months before had just spluttered back into life, and all these, my excitement and motivation and appreciation of beauty, all this sort of thing had suddenly started to come back online. And I was beginning to remember what feeling happy felt like. And I put it all down to the walking. Well, not all of it, but I put it down to being outside and making that first step into talking. And I had an idea. I went into town straight away and I bought a map of Great Britain, and I sat frantically circling all the parts of the country that I thought would inspire me to stay outside the whole, you know, and just to kind of keep this good feeling going. And I thought in turn, if I document that, then I might inspire other people who've been through what I've been through to get outside as well. Once I'd circled all the bits of Great Britain that I wanted to see, I put a big line through them all, and this route appeared in front of me. I'm like, yes, I'm doing that. I need to do that. That was the easy bit, obviously. The hard bit wasn't getting myself match fit, which was really hard. You should have seen me. It wasn't researching and sourcing the kit I needed. It wasn't plotting my route to the end. It was telling people what I was going to, not so much what I was going to do, but why I was going to do it, because it meant coming clean, finally. All these feelings that I've been so ashamed of for so long, all this stuff that I thought compromised who I am as a person, I had to tell them all. It was the worst thing I ever had to do, and the best thing I ever did. The response absolutely floored me, and I couldn't believe the amount of people that were going through the same kind of thing I was going through. And all of a sudden, I realized that this was important. This is something I really, really have to do. The name I gave my 3,000-mile hike around Great Britain was Black Dog Walks. 6 weeks later, I stood at Brighton Pier and just started heading west. All I had on me, ironically, were the things that I needed to survive. In a week, I'd reached Bournemouth. In a month and a half, I'd reached Land's End. And at this point, it was all about promoting exercise and being outdoors as a way of managing mental health and raising money for the Mental Health Foundation. But by the time I got up to Wales, I'd been gone for so long, the thing had turned from a challenge into a lifestyle where I'd found a way to live in the moment, serendipitous encounters with strangers and being immersed in nature all the time. And having the feeling like you're living completely in the moment is like gold dust to a depressive. By the time I'd made it into North Wales, climbed Mount Snowdon and come back, I was getting messages from people all over the country. And I couldn't believe how open people were being about their own experiences and how much this was connecting with people. And I noticed something really, really interesting. A lot of people who got in touch with me hadn't actually told anyone else. I was the first person they were telling. And they was like, no one else could understand. And I remember having that feeling as well. Because everything in my life led me to my depression, that awful feeling. You know, the situations I've been in, the people in my life, the decisions I've made, everything had just reached that one moment. I thought, how the hell is anyone going to understand that? And that was the thread that was running through all these conversations that I was having with people. They were like, no one's going to understand me because I've been through this, and this. And I realized that's not what we should be talking about. It's the feeling itself. Because depression is huge. Like, it's the biggest, most inclusive club in the world. Like, anyone can join. It's evolving all the time. But its biggest trick is convincing everyone who's part of that club that they're the only member. Isn't that clever? And everyone thinks that their stuff is the worst and no one's ever had it as bad as me and all the guilt that goes with that and everything. But that's because we're talking about the wrong things. If we start talking about the feeling itself, then people can get on board with that. People know what that's like. And that's when things turn into a community. Last November, I experienced the true nature of community when I did this. I got involved in a BBC documentary where I and 9 other people with mental health problems decided to tell our stories to the nation and run the London Marathon together. Initially, I thought it was just going to be something about mental health and endorphins and all the things that I've been trying to sum up within the walk. But as it went on, I realized that running was the backdrop and it was more the community and the achievement and all these things that running led to that were having a real positive impact on my mental health. Movement is the word my coach Chevy, who's that guy, uses instead of exercise, I think. I still don't quite know how his brain works, and that's why I love it. But movement sort of isn't just about exercise. It's about moving forward. It's about progression. It's about working on yourself physically and mentally and being there for other people. By being in the documentary, I mean, I was communicating by, doing the walk before through video blogging, but I had the kind of safety net there of talking about it talking into my phone on my own and having the luxury of being able to trim out some of the waffle, some of the stuff that I thought wasn't necessary later on before I posted it as a video blog. What Mind Over Marathon told me to do, or forced me to do even, was to put an unedited version of myself out there. And that's when I realized what a great leveler talking about your mental health openly is. Nobody's above anyone else in that conversation. I think a lot of how we present ourselves is run by ego and status, and I think a lot of that, it governs how, the things that we do and what we say. A discussion about mental health seems to suspend all that, and it levels the playing field. And that's great because it's a reminder that really we're all on the same team. We all have mental health, and the more we learn about each other's, the more we learn about our own. Whether it was talking to one of the guys, my coach, Nick Knowles, Prince Harry, I don't know if I've got a picture of Prince Harry actually. Oh yeah, I totally do. It's when we announced that we were having our first child. That's libelous. That didn't happen. I didn't impregnate Prince Harry on the set of Mind Over Marathon. It's important that you know that. But I love this picture because we do look like mates and we look relaxed, and that's because I've been lucky enough to have, look, Will photobombing in the background there. We'd had this conversation, this 15-minute, 20-minute long conversation, and I was asking him how he was doing. He was asking me how I was doing. It was real. We'd leveled it all out, and I didn't feel beneath him. Prince Harry got on top of him. No, that stops now. That stops now. And breaking down the invisible barriers that society creates for us, barriers which make us question our place in the world, is just good for everybody. Talking about mental health is what's best for society, because deep down, everyone craves human connection. The walk's still going on. I came down from Inverness. I've walked over 2,000 miles, and after this, I'll be heading back up there to finish it up, back to John O'Groats, and then head back to Brighton. And and hopefully finish sometime this winter. So I'm not going to finish on that because it's not done yet. I want to finish on something that I have achieved and something I'm proud of, because I want to show that in the face of depression, people can achieve big things, and that's a powerful thing. This is something I wrote the day after I ran the London Marathon, and a year after I lay in bed that day about to kill myself. As I approach the marker at mile 26, my body begins to feel heavy. It feels like with every step that I take, another layer of clothing goes on. By the time me and Poppy march past the Houses of Parliament, I feel like I'm wearing a suit of armour. And then we run. The last 0.2 miles is harder than the 26 before it. It's almost impossible. 800 metres to go, 600 metres to go, 400. I feel like I'm running through water. 200. The crowd's cheer snaps me back into reality, and I realise what's happening, where I am and what I'm about to do. I reach out and I grab Poppy's hand and do my best to hold it up, but I'm so weak I could barely lift my own arm. Our feet pound the road in unison, both knees strapped up, as we finally cross the line in 5 hours and 52 minutes. And as my pace drops and I begin to walk, I feel strangely calm. I glide over to the people that have been there with me over the last 6 months. As I watch them cry and hug and congratulate, I take a step back and I make a promise to myself that whenever I feel worthless, whenever I feel alone and ashamed of the feelings I'm feeling, I'll play this moment over and over again in my head until it goes away. Because the feeling I have right now, I don't want to die. I want to live forever. Thank you.
So I hope you took some information from those two strong men in stating how they felt about their mental health, the struggles they overcame, and knowing that it's possible to overcome them. Each took a different approach and owned it. And I think that is something that each and every one of you is capable of doing as well. So now we're going to go into common depression treatments that we have talked about and that the two young men talked about as well. So therapy. It's important to find the right therapist for you. That's so important. It's so vital. You want to make sure you find someone you can trust and feel that you can open up to about any negative thoughts you may be having. If you're noticing that you're not connecting with a therapist you've been referred to or started with, that's okay. You can always switch to someone else. You need to feel in control. You need to feel completely comfortable in expressing what you're feeling. That's how you're going to get the most out of therapy. Medication. This option may be right for you if you feel unable to function with your depressive symptoms. So if you feel your depression is impacting your schoolwork, your job, family, personal relationships, you might want to speak to your physician or find a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse to see if they can prescribe medications. As a side note, never take any medications that are not prescribed to you. You should definitely seek a professional and see what medications are right for you based off of your medical history. And overall wellness. So wellness and self-care are vital to maintain a stable mood. Doing things that allow you to feel better about yourself and boost self-esteem are important in managing depressive symptoms. Exercising, meditating, listening to music, getting involved and becoming social, those are big boosters that will help increase your overall mental state. Just like Jake Tyler had talked about biking and exercising and being part of a group, that in and of itself is wellness, and that can help increase your overall mood. And hopefully through time, it won't feel as a chore, but something that you just love to do. And obviously, you all have access to the Wellness Center here at Gateway. If you are struggling with depression or any other suicidal thoughts, the Wellness Center is here to help you in any way we can. You as a Gateway student are a vital asset to this community and do not need to struggle alone. Here we have our location, our hours, and currently for COVID, we are seeing students virtually. However, if you are in crisis, feel free to come visit us, obviously using the COVID protocols of wearing a mask. And you can also find our website and our link on Gateway's main webpage under Counseling and Wellness. Here are the list of resources that we used for this workshop today. Those are awesome resources should you want to learn more about the data we grabbed today, or just other risk factors, symptoms, anything like that. These are awesome resources that you can find. And obviously you can email myself, Stephanie Perez at sperez@gwcc.comnet.edu, for more information, as well as our other counselor, Lisela Arboleda, at larboleda@gwcc.comnet.edu. It was a pleasure, and I hope you gained a lot more insight on this presentation. And please do not hesitate to reach out to the Wellness Center should you need any other information. Take care and be well.